In March 1997, a helicopter rose above the Indonesian jungle. Inside sat Michael de Guzman. Below him stretched miles of rainforest, silent, humid, indifferent, a thick green canopy that concealed rivers, insects, heat, and the quiet persistence of nature. Behind him was a company worth more than $6 billion. Ahead of him was scrutiny that threatened to unravel it. Minutes later, he was gone. But long before the helicopter, there was belief. And belief can move markets faster than gold ever could. Because gold, in the end, must be pulled from the ground, crushed, refined, and weighed. Belief only needs a story. And Busang had become one of the most powerful stories in modern finance. A story strong enough to move entire communities, retirement funds, and the ambitions of men who had waited their whole lives for something extraordinary. A small company with a big story. Bre-X Minerals was not born powerful. In the early 1990s, it was a small Canadian exploration company trading on the Alberta Stock Exchange. Its founder, David Walsh, had spent years trying to turn modest profits into something transformative. Success had been inconsistent. Cash was limited. Investors were cautious. Bre-X was one of many small mining juniors, hopeful, underfunded, and largely ignored. In the mining world, such companies survive on possibility. They acquire exploration rights, drill a few holes, publish technical reports, and hope for something promising enough to attract capital. Most never find it. When Bre-X began drilling in East Kalimantan, Indonesia, few paid attention. Busang was remote, dense jungle, helicopter access only. Equipment had to be flown in piece by piece. Camps were assembled in thick humidity. Drills operated in mud and heat. Rain fell without warning. Logistics were fragile. It was the kind of site that either becomes a footnote or a headline. Michael de Guzman was a senior geologist on the project, experienced, methodical, familiar with Southeast Asian terrain. He had worked in mining exploration for years. He understood drill programs. He understood how core samples are split, catalogued, crushed, and tested. He understood the quiet ritual of exploration: drill, log, sample, assay, report. Most importantly, he understood that exploration success depends on numbers, and numbers, once released, travel quickly. The early results showed gold, then more gold, then significantly more. At first the grades were promising but modest, enough to continue, enough to justify more drilling, enough to raise cautious optimism inside the company. But as additional holes were completed, assay results began showing increasing concentrations. Internal confidence grew. Maps were redrawn. Cross-sections suggested continuity. Conversation shifted from maybe to how big. By 1995, Bre-X began publishing estimates that suggested Busang might contain tens of millions of ounces of gold. Then the numbers grew again. Some reports suggested more than 70 million ounces. If true, it would have been one of the largest discoveries in modern mining history. That possibility changed everything. The market responds. At first, the share price rose gradually. Investors were cautious but intrigued. Bre-X moved from under $1 to several dollars per share. Early investors congratulated themselves quietly. Then additional resource estimates were released. The numbers grew larger. The price accelerated. Bre-X shares moved from single digits to double digits, then beyond. By 1996, the stock was climbing almost daily. Financial news outlets covered the story as a national triumph. A small Canadian company had outperformed the giants. Analysts described Busang as transformational, a deposit that could rival the largest mines in the world. The narrative was simple and powerful. A small underdog had uncovered unimaginable wealth in the jungle. In Alberta, something else happened. Bre-X became personal. Local newspapers ran stories about early investors who had become millionaires on paper. Small-town brokers reported surges in new accounts. Conversations in coffee shops centered on share prices and future gains. In Calgary and Edmonton, brokerage offices saw lines form before markets opened. Retirees who had once relied on cautious dividend stocks began reallocating funds. There were mechanics who invested savings meant for new equipment, teachers who moved retirement contributions into Bre-X shares, small business owners who sold inventory early to free up cash for buying more. In some communities, it felt as though everyone owned a piece of Busang. People talked openly about early retirement, about paying off mortgages, about lake houses, about sending children to university debt-free. Some borrowed against homes to increase positions. Some shifted entire retirement funds into Bre-X shares. The narrative reinforced itself. Each new high in share price validated the previous decision to buy. The rising chart became proof. Skepticism began to feel irrational. At its peak, Bre-X traded above 280 Canadian dollars per share. The company's market value surpassed $6 billion. This was not just speculation, it was a collective movement. It was belief converted into market capitalization. Michael de Guzman in the middle. While investors watched charts from thousands of miles away, de Guzman remained at Busang. He moved between drill rigs and camp offices. He oversaw core logging. He reviewed sampling procedures. He monitored the steady flow of assay results. He signed off on reports that would travel from the jungle to Toronto to Calgary to New York. He understood what those numbers meant once they left the jungle. Each report translated into headlines. Each headline translated into buying. As the valuation climbed, so did his personal wealth. Stock options, bonuses, access to capital. He began living differently. Luxury vehicles, high-end hotels, extended stays in major cities. There were accounts of lavish nights in clubs, gambling, expensive gifts. He reportedly maintained relationships in multiple countries, supporting families in more than one place. Money moved fast. He was no longer just a field geologist in muddy boots. He was a man tied to a discovery worth billions. To those around him, he appeared as the natural outcome of success. A man who had helped uncover one of the greatest gold deposits in history, enjoying its rewards. But Busang had not yet become a producing mine. No gold bars were being poured. No trucks were hauling ore. The wealth existed primarily in valuation. And valuation depends on belief. And belief depends on consistency. The self-feeding cycle. The most powerful force in the Bre-X story was not geology. It was momentum. As the share price climbed, more investors felt pressure to enter. No one wanted to miss what seemed like a once-in-a-generation opportunity. Financial advisors recommended partial exposure. Mutual funds took positions. International investors followed Canadian enthusiasm. Television segments began explaining gold reserves and projected output as though they were already established fact. Bre-X was discussed far beyond mining circles. At dinner tables, in offices, in retirement communities. The story became simple. A massive gold discovery validated by rising share prices. Each new resource estimate was larger than the last. Each new estimate justified the previous valuation. Few demanded immediate independent verification. After all, the market itself seemed to confirm the discovery. When billions of dollars are attached to a narrative, skepticism grows quieter. The higher the stock rose, the harder it became to question it. Because questioning it meant questioning your own gains. And few people question success while it's still rising. Cracks began to show. By late 1996, global mining corporations demanded access. Freeport-McMoRan insisted on independent drilling. Their involvement was framed publicly as partnership. Privately, it was verification. Fresh drill holes were sunk under tighter supervision. New samples were extracted and tested independently. When the first results returned, they were underwhelming, then disappointing, then alarming. The gold concentrations reported by Freeport did not resemble the numbers Bre-X had published. The discrepancy was not subtle, it was dramatic. The market reacted cautiously at first. Minor dips, public reassurances. Executives insisted that geological complexity explained the differences. But uncertainty had entered the story. Inside Bre-X, pressure intensified. Investors demanded clarity. Analysts sought explanations. Phone calls multiplied. Meetings extended late into the night. The higher the valuation had climbed, the steeper the potential fall. For de Guzman, the weight was personal. He had overseen the sampling process. He had been at the center of the numbers that fueled belief. He had lived in the glow of that belief. Now, independent data threatened to dismantle it. The distance between $6 billion and zero can be very short, and when belief falters, it does so quickly. The final moments. In March 1997, Michael de Guzman boarded a helicopter near the Busang site. Reports say he was traveling to meet Freeport representatives. The jungle below remained unchanged. The markets above were anything but. Mid-flight, he exited the aircraft. The fall was fatal. His body was later recovered in the jungle below. Indonesian authorities ruled the death a suicide. The market did not wait for further details. Bre-X shares collapsed. Within days, billions of dollars evaporated. For some communities in Alberta, the losses were devastating. Retirements postponed, savings erased, trust fractured. There were investors who watched their life savings shrink to fractions of what they had been weeks before. Neighbors stopped talking about share prices. Brokerage offices fell silent. The narrative that had once united investors dissolved into disbelief. Shortly afterward, Freeport completed its verification. The deposit was not as described. The discovery that had fueled $6 billion in valuation did not exist in commercial form. Investigators later revealed that the samples had been altered. The term salting entered the headlines. But by then, the financial damage had already been done. Aftermath. Bre-X filed for bankruptcy. David Walsh denied orchestrating fraud, insisting he had relied on the data provided to him. He died in 1998 before Canadian legal proceedings concluded. Regulators tightened reporting requirements for mining companies. Independent verification standards were strengthened. The mining industry adjusted. Bre-X became a case study in excess. In business schools, it would later be cited as an example of unchecked optimism and inadequate oversight. But for investors, the lesson was not abstract. It was personal. Entire communities had believed. The rise had felt rational. The numbers had been published. The analysts had confirmed. The price had validated. And then, it had vanished. The man at the center. Michael de Guzman's life ended officially in March 1997. He rose with the discovery. He lived in its glow. He watched as a remote stretch of jungle became the focus of global markets. Whether he engineered the deception or was overwhelmed by it remains debated. What is certain is this: the gold was not there in the quantities promised. The stock rose beyond $6 billion. Entire communities invested, and a man stepped out of a helicopter. Below him was jungle. Above him was belief, collapsing. The helicopter continued forward. The market recalibrated. The forest remained. And somewhere between ambition and gravity, one of the greatest financial illusions of the 20th century came to an end. But the jungle did not care. It never had.